In a reimagined world where giant rabbits, 1,000 times the size of humans, suddenly appeared, chaos erupted as these monstrous creatures began attacking major cities across the globe. The initial shockwave of their arrival caused massive destruction, with an estimated death toll of over 10 million people and countless civilians displaced and injured. In the battle between humans and these colossal rabbits, advanced military technology and aerial warfare were deployed, but the rabbits' immense size and strength made them nearly unstoppable, leading to widespread devastation of infrastructure and civilization. Despite humanity's relentless efforts, the giant rabbits continued their rampage, ultimately forcing humans to retreat, and in this dark new era, the question remains, who would win in this war, and why? In a reimagined world where giant spiders 1,000 times the size of humans suddenly attacked Earth, chaos erupted across the planet. The spiders, with their enormous legs and deadly venom, tore through cities and forests, causing unprecedented destruction and death. Humans rallied with advanced technology, using drones, tanks, and even nuclear weapons in a desperate fight for survival, but the spiders' resilience and size made victory seem distant. Despite the massive death toll of over 10 million humans and the collapse of many civilizations, humanity's ingenuity and unity kept hope alive in the battle against these monstrous invaders. In a reimagined world where giant venomous snakes 1,000 times the size of humans suddenly emerged, chaos erupted across the earth. The initial attack was catastrophic, with the colossal creatures slithering through cities like unstoppable natural disasters. Buildings crumbled under their massive bodies and entire civilizations were decimated within days. The death toll skyrocketed as billions perished in the initial wave of serpent fury, estimated to be over 10 billion. Meteors of panic rained down as governments scrambled to respond to the unprecedented threat. Despite their enormous size, the snakes proved to be surprisingly intelligent and adaptable predators. Humans initially underestimated their adversaries, believing traditional military tactics would suffice. But the giants adapted quickly, smashing tanks, airplanes, and entire military bases with ease. The damage to global infrastructure was unparalleled. Airports, bridges, and cities fell silent under serpent assaults. In the face of destruction, some nations attempted to use nuclear weapons against the creatures, but it only enraged them. The giant snakes seemed invulnerable to conventional weaponry. Their scales reflected the blasts and absorbed the energy. As months passed, the world was gripped by a state of terror and despair, with humanity fighting for survival. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to develop new technology, but progress was slow against such formidable foes. Meanwhile, the snakes continued their conquest, expanding their territory across continents like a living wave of destruction. Civilizations fell one after another, with some cities evacuated and others abandoned entirely. The damage was devastating. Entire forests, mountain ranges, and lakes were destroyed or contaminated by serpent activity. Thousands of military personnel lost their lives attempting to hold back these monstrous giants. The war persisted for years, with human resistance focusing on guerrilla tactics and underground bunkers. Despite their size, the giant snakes displayed surprising agility, often ambushing from underground or from the water. The global population plummeted as the death toll neared 15 billion, with only pockets of resistance remaining. Among the survivors, a new hope emerged. Scientists developed a specialized bioweapon designed to target the snakes' nervous systems. Using drones and stealth technology, humans launched daring strikes into serpent nests hidden deep in the wilderness. Some snakes were taken down, but at a tremendous cost, as their deaths caused massive environmental disruptions. The War of Giants was unlike anything in recorded history, fundamentally reshaping Earth's ecosystems and human society. Many populations were forced to live in isolated, fortified zones, constantly fearing new serpent assaults. The global economy had collapsed, with trade and communication networks severed for years at a time. Religious and cultural upheaval followed as humanity grappled with its vulnerability and the collapse of old worldviews. New alliances formed among nations desperate to survive, uniting against this common monstrous foe. Caught in the chaos, a few brave leaders and scientists devised a bold plan to lure the largest snakes into traps using decoys and seismic signals. The plan was risky and unpredictable, but it became humanity's last hope to tip the scales in this brutal war. In a tense showdown, the traps succeeded, causing the largest serpent to be captured and studied for weaknesses. Finally, the knowledge gained allowed for the development of targeted bioweapons to weaken and eventually eradicate the giants. After years of relentless battle, the giant snake threat was finally subdued, but at a tremendous human cost. The Earth bore scars of the epic war, with scarred landscapes and broken civilizations serving as grim reminders. Nearly 5 billion lives had been lost, and millions more were displaced, seeking refuge from the post-apocalyptic world. Yet, amidst the destruction, humanity showed resilience, rebuilding societies step by step from the ruins. The war against the 1000X giant snakes proved that even in the face of unimaginable terror, hope and ingenuity could lead to survival. In this reimagined Earth, humans learned hard lessons about humility, unity, and the resilience of life amidst chaos. And so, with scars but not broken spirits, humanity moved forward into a new era, forever changed by the monstrous threat they had faced. The viral story of this epic battle spread across the world, inspiring tales of heroism, innovation, and survival against all odds. It became a cautionary legend, reminding future generations of the devastating power of nature and the indomitable strength of the human spirit. In a reimagined world where chaos reigns and ancient predators have returned, giant black panthers 1,000 times larger than humans launched a devastating attack on Earth. Their sleek, monstrous bodies moved with terrifying speed, tearing through cities and forests, leaving destruction in their wake. The world scrambled to respond, governments collapsing as entire regions fell under the shadow of these colossal predators. In the first week alone, the death toll soared past 10 million as panthers unleashed carnage across continents. Civilization shattered, iconic skylines were reduced to rubble, and millions fled or hid in despair. Scientists and military strategists debated fiercely. Could humanity survive this new nightmare, or was extinction inevitable? The nations united in a desperate attempt to combat the unstoppable creatures, deploying every weapon at their disposal. However, conventional military tactics proved useless against opponents of such immense size and agility. The giants tore through armored tanks like paper, smashing buildings with their massive paws and crushing everything beneath their weight. In the face of overwhelming destruction, humanity's hope seemed to fade as the death count ticked upward beyond 50 million. Some speculated that the giant panthers were a result of genetic experiments gone wrong, while others believed nature had simply rebirthed an ancient nightmare. Despite the destruction, a few elite scientists believed that a new form of warfare could turn the tide in favor of humans. They developed a plan utilizing high-frequency sound waves designed to disorient the panthers, exploiting their sensitive hearing. The pivotal battle took place in what was once New York City, now a battleground strewn with wreckage and chaos. Using sonic weapons, the humans managed to temporarily disorient a faction of the giants, buying precious time for civilians to evacuate. Yet the resilience of these monsters persisted, leading to further destruction and a death toll surpassing 80 million globally. Many smaller civilizations and towns were wiped out completely, leaving behind scars that would take centuries to heal. In this new world order, humans faced a stark choice: surrender or fight with everything they had, risking further annihilation. Ultimately, the war against the giant black panthers demonstrated that even in the face of monstrous odds, human ingenuity and resilience could still ignite a spark of hope. In a reimagined world, humanity faced an unprecedented crisis when giant penguins, 1,000 times larger than humans, suddenly emerged and attacked the Earth. These colossal creatures towered over cities, their icy eyes filled with rage and confusion. The initial attack was brutal. Entire coastal cities were drowned under massive waves caused by their stomping footsteps. As the news spread globally, chaos erupted, with millions fleeing in terror from the looming icy behemoths. Military forces scrambled to respond, launching missiles and deploying tanks in a desperate attempt to stop the giants. But their conventional weapons proved futile against creatures of such immense size and strength. The death toll skyrocketed as cities were leveled, with an estimated 3 million lives lost within the first weeks. Civilizations near coastlines were particularly devastated, with entire metropolitan areas reduced to rubble. Networks and communication systems crumbled under the assault, plunging the world into a state of chaos and confusion. Scientists were baffled, struggling to understand why these giant penguins had suddenly appeared and turned hostile. Some hypothesized a radiation leak or climate anomaly had triggered their bizarre transformation. Others believed these creatures were ancient beings awakened from a long slumber deep beneath the ice caps. Amid this chaos, governments around the world formed an uneasy alliance to coordinate their defenses. However, conventional means were ineffective, forcing humanity to invent new strategies on the fly. Specialized teams tried to lure the giants into traps, but their intelligence and unpredictable movements made it difficult. The world's military assets were pushed to their limits, but the giants continued their destructive rampage. As cities fell and populations dwindled, the global economy collapsed, causing widespread famine and suffering. In this desperate time, some resilient communities turned to guerrilla warfare, attacking the giants at close range. Using building materials as makeshift weapons, they launched daring raids, buying precious time for humanity. Yet, the giants adapted quickly, learning to guard themselves against makeshift attacks and return with more fury. The battle raged for months, draining resources, morale, and hope across the remaining pockets of civilization. By the 6th month, it's estimated that over 10 million people had perished worldwide. Cities like New York, Tokyo, and London were almost completely destroyed, leaving behind memories of what once was. The Earth's landscape was forever scarred, with vast icy footprints frozen in the rubble of fallen metropolises. The giants seemed unstoppable, their sheer size and strength dwarfing any human offensive effort. Despite this, small groups of survivors kept fighting, inspired by stories of resilience and survival. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to develop new weapons specifically designed to combat these behemoths. They experimented with giant net traps, sonic deterrents, and even attempted to exploit weaknesses in their thick, icy armor. In a pivotal moment, a daring plan was executed to bait a giant into the Arctic, where scientists believed a strategic attack could succeed. After weeks of preparation, a specially equipped drone managed to lure one into a trap, crippling it temporarily. This was a glimmer of hope, showing that with ingenuity and courage, humanity could still stand against the creatures. Nevertheless, the scale of destruction remained staggering, and the world was forever changed. Alongside the loss of millions, countless fossils, artworks, and cultural treasures were obliterated in the chaos. The Earth's natural ecosystems suffered immensely as the giants trampled and devoured entire habitats. The climate also took a hit, with massive ice blocks melting and disrupting global weather patterns. Throughout this ordeal, a question persisted among survivors. Who would ultimately win the war, the humans or the giants? In a reimagined world where giant man-eating pigs 1,000 times the size of humans suddenly emerged, chaos erupted across the planet. The first sightings were terrifying. Colossal shadows loomed overhead as these monstrous creatures tore through cities with savage brutality. The pigs, with tusks like skyscrapers and crushing hooves, left destruction in their wake, turning once bustling urban landscapes into smoldering ruins. News spread rapidly through social media, with videos of the horrific attacks going viral within minutes. The global death toll skyrocketed. Over 15 million people lost their lives in the initial onslaught alone. Civilizations crumbled as governments struggled to mobilize defenses against such improbable yet devastating foes. Airplanes were useless. Their size and strength made conventional weaponry obsolete against these behemoths. The pigs seemed unstoppable, their attacks relentless, targeting everything from military bases to vital infrastructure. In desperation, scientists and military leaders forged a plan to deploy experimental weapons, hoping to turn the tide of battle. Meanwhile, civilians evacuated in panic, leaving behind towns reduced to rubble and memories of safety. The war persisted for months, with humanity suffering significant losses both in terms of lives and cultural heritage. Damage to civilizational infrastructure was unparalleled. Cities lay in ruins, communication networks shattered, economies collapsing. Despite the destruction, pockets of resistance fought fiercely, using everything from guerrilla tactics to cyber warfare. Some believed that nature's vengeance had been unleashed with these giant pigs, a warning about humanity's disrespect for the environment. Scientists hypothesized that the pigs' enormous size was due to a mutation triggered by environmental toxins released decades earlier. As the war dragged on, mutated animals and other monstrous creatures started appearing, complicating the battle further. The world's military powers combined their efforts in a desperate bid to eradicate the threat once and for all. Specialized units trained for monster combat engaged in fierce battles, often ending in tragic losses. The pigs retaliated with ferocity, their intelligence and size giving them an almost supernatural edge. In one notable clash, a military force of thousands was decimated in hours by a single herd of these giants. The global population was reduced dramatically. Estimates suggest that nearly 80 million people had perished within the first year. Cities like London, New York, and Tokyo became war zones, dotted with wreckage and the remains of brave fighters. The Earth's ecosystem was thrown into chaos, with many species going extinct due to the destruction and radiation from the fighting. Around the world, terrified survivors hid in bunkers, praying for salvation that seemed increasingly unlikely. Religious leaders, scientists, and civilians all wondered if this was humanity's reckoning or just a nightmare from which to awaken. In the midst of this catastrophe, some hopeful voices emerged, claiming the pigs' size made them vulnerable to targeted explosions and traps. A daring plan was devised to lure the giants into a trap using massive bait and high-yield explosives. During the final assault, massive detonations shook the earth as the traps were sprung, causing significant damage to the herd. The battle was fierce. Some giants fell, but many more continued fighting with relentless rage. The tipping point came when humans developed a biologically engineered virus aimed specifically at the pigs' weaknesses. The virus spread rapidly through the herd, weakening the giants and enabling ground forces to strike decisive blows. Eventually, the monstrous pigs were driven back into desolate wastelands, their numbers drastically reduced. Although victorious, humanity bore scars. The world was forever changed, scarred by war and loss. The death count exceeded 100 million total worldwide, making it one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. Civilization had to rebuild from the ashes, learning from both the destruction and the resilience shown in the face of terror. In reimagining this world, it became clear that even the most impossible threats could be challenged with ingenuity and courage. Humans realized that unity and advanced technology were their greatest weapons against such monstrous adversaries. The war against the giant pigs served as a stark reminder of nature's power and the importance of respecting ecological balance. Today, remnants of the war still stand as monuments to mankind's resilience and the lessons learned. The story of humanity's fight against the colossal pigs is now a viral legend, inspiring future generations to stand strong. In this reimagined world, the victory was not just over the pigs, but a testament to human spirit and adaptability. Despite the devastation, life continued, each scar a reminder of the resilience that defines humanity. And so, the world began to heal, forever changed but unyielding in its pursuit of peace and survival. In a reimagined world where giant ladybugs 1,000 times the size of humans suddenly attacked Earth, chaos erupted instantly. The sky darkened with swarms of colossal insects, their wings blotting out the sun and casting monstrous shadows over cities below. Humans scrambled for safety, but the size and ferocity of the ladybugs made conventional weapons almost useless in the initial onslaught. Within days, entire civilizations faced devastating damage, with millions losing their homes and countless lives lost in panicked evacuations. The death toll skyrocketed to over 50 million as towns and metropolises were pulverized under the relentless insect onslaught. Military forces deployed everything from jets to nuclear strikes, yet the giant ladybugs proved remarkably resilient, shrugging off explosions and gunfire alike. Despite the chaos, humans adapted quickly, developing new technology in attempts to combat the winged giants. Bioweapons, giant net traps, and laser-guided missiles. After months of brutal warfare, the tide began to turn as specialized defense units managed to target the insects' weak spots, leading to a massive counterattack. In the climax of this colossal war, humans, equipped with ingenuity and resilience, ultimately managed to drive the ladybugs back, though at a tremendous cost to civilization and countless lives. In a reimagined world where giant skunks, 1,000 times the size of humans, suddenly appeared, chaos erupted overnight. The skies darkened with their enormous silhouettes, and cities trembled beneath the thunderous footsteps of these colossal creatures. Their foul stench spread for miles, turning once thriving metropolises into ghost towns almost instantly. The initial attack saw countless lives lost as the skunks sprayed toxic, corrosive musk that decimated everything in their path. Within days, the death toll soared into the millions and humanity's hope dwindled. Worldwide, infrastructure was reduced to rubble. Bridges collapsed, buildings dissolved under the corrosive spray, and planes fell from the sky. Governments scrambled to respond, deploying tanks, jets, and nuclear arsenals, but nothing seemed to stop the behemoth skunks. The creatures' massive size and strength made them nearly impervious to conventional weapons. Humans faced an existential crisis, fighting desperately for survival against the apocalyptic menace. The war against the giant skunks was brutal and almost hopeless from the start. Scientific communities frantically researched their weak points, but their enormous size made targeted attacks nearly impossible. Despite their size, the skunks were surprisingly agile, slipping through defenses and smashing through military lines. The global economy had collapsed as global transportation and communication networks fell apart under the skunks' assault. Cities lay in ruins and billions of people were displaced or dead within the first month. Famine and disease followed as sanitation systems were destroyed and clean water became scarce. Human civilization was on the brink of extinction, pushed to its limits in a desperate fight for survival. But amid despair, some strategists proposed unconventional tactics. Could the skunks be driven back using biochemical weapons? Yet even these efforts resulted in more destruction and unpredictable ecological consequences. Nature itself seemed to be fighting back as ecosystems collapsed and the planet started to heal the scars inflicted by the monsters. In the midst of destruction, a resilient human resistance emerged, using scavenged technology and ingenuity to combat the giants. They faced every day with the hope of turning the tide, though losses were staggering. The death count exceeded 50 million worldwide within the first 2 months alone, marking one of humanity's darkest eras. By then, many once bustling civilizations had become ruins, forever altered by the rampage of the giant skunks. The question remained, who would win this war, the overwhelming might of the giant skunks or the relentless human spirit? In a battle of sheer power versus cunning and adaptability, the humans pulled together to devise new strategies. Using sound waves and electromagnetic pulses, they managed to slow down and hurt the skunks temporarily, buying precious time. Eventually, they deployed massive traps and innovative barrier systems designed to contain or deter the creatures. It was a fragile hope, but it sparked the eventual turning point in the war. Slowly, human ingenuity began to outsmart the giants, forcing them into retreat over strategic zones and trap networks. Months of fierce fighting finally shifted the tide. The giant skunks started retreating into the wilderness, weakened and disoriented. Despite the victory, the planet was forever scarred, and humanity had lost a significant portion of its population and history. Civilizations that once thrived were reduced to ruins, and the survivors mourned their fallen loved ones. Yet from this devastation, a new world emerged, scarred but resilient, determined to rebuild and learn from the catastrophe. People wondered whether such a nightmare could ever recur, or if humanity would ever forget the lessons of the giant skunks' invasion. In the end, it was a story of destruction and defiance, a testament to survival in the face of overwhelming odds. The world would never be the same, but life persisted, stronger and more prepared for future threats. In a world reimagined where giant baboons 1,000 times the size of humans suddenly attacked Earth, chaos erupted like never before. The sky darkened with their colossal shadows as they roared and thundered through cities, tearing down skyscrapers with ease. The initial impact was devastating. Within days, millions of lives were lost, and entire civilizations crumbled under their relentless assault. Government agencies scrambled to respond, deploying military forces equipped with the latest weaponry, but nothing seemed to stop these monstrous beasts. The death toll skyrocketed. Estimates suggest over 20 million fatalities within the first month of the invasion. Cities like New York, Tokyo, and London turned into battlegrounds, with buildings reduced to rubble in minutes. The damage was unprecedented, wiping out centuries of human progress and leaving a barren wasteland scarred by destruction. Despite their size, the giant baboons exhibited extraordinary intelligence, coordinating attacks and avoiding defenses with feral cunning. humanity's only hope lay in developing advanced technology, including giant robotic exoskeletons and drone swarms to combat the beasts. Scientists speculated that these giant baboons might have emerged from a genetic anomaly caused by unchecked environmental damage or a mysterious experiment gone wrong. As weeks turned into months, the conflict intensified, with some regions resisting fiercely, turning into fortified zones. Yet, the giants were relentless, crushing everything in their path, showing no signs of fatigue or mercy. The world's infrastructure was decimated, with power grids, communication networks, and transportation systems obliterated or severely damaged. Global economy collapsed under the weight of the destruction, causing widespread famine and scarcity of supplies. Amidst the chaos, a few small communities managed to band together, utilizing makeshift weapons and guerrilla tactics to survive. Sky-high tolls were suffered, with civilian deaths exceeding 50 million worldwide in the most brutal months of the war. Human resistance groups launched daring raids, but the size and strength of the giants made conventional warfare nearly impossible. Some predicted that if the giants continued their rampage, humanity might face extinction within a year. Nevertheless, hope flickered as scientists began using AI and genetic engineering to develop countermeasures against the giants. The question arose, who would ultimately win this colossal war, the unyielding humans or the titanic baboons? Many argued that in today's times humans had the advantage due to their adaptability, advanced technology, and strategic planning. Others believed the giants' sheer size and brute strength would overwhelm any human defenses if they managed to bypass military firepower. The battlefield was no longer just physical but also digital, with hackers trying to disable the giants' communication and control systems. In a desperate bid, some nations deployed artificial intelligence-powered drones to track and attack the giants' weak spots. Yet the giants' resilience was staggering. They weathered barrage after barrage of missiles, showing superior durability. Human casualties continued to mount, with some estimates projecting over 100 million deaths if the war dragged on for another year. Civilians in cities that survived the initial onslaught faced ongoing terror from roaming giant crews that raised everything anew. The environmental impact was catastrophic, with ecosystems destroyed and climate disruptions caused by the massive destruction. The world's governments announced plans to evacuate survivors to underground bunkers and remote islands for safety. Medical facilities were overwhelmed, with shortages of supplies and emergency personnel unable to cope with the scale of injuries. Despite the devastation, stories of human resilience and bravery spread on social media, inspiring hope amid despair. Memes, videos, and viral campaigns captured the world's attention, rallying humanity's spirit to fight back. Scientists revealed that the giants' aggression might be rooted in a biological response to environmental toxins, giving a glimmer of hope for future cures. As months passed, some military strategists suggested that waiting for natural exhaustion or internal conflict among the giants might be a viable tactic. Meanwhile, a coalition of nations announced a daring plan to deploy a massive electromagnetic pulse device aimed at disabling the giants' nervous systems. The outcome hung in the balance as the world watched, bracing for a final push either to save humanity or face total annihilation. In this reimagined world of chaos and destruction, the question remained, would humanity adapt, or would the giants dominate entirely? The battle for Earth was far from over, and every day brought new stories of heroism, loss, and the fight for survival. In the end, amid the wreckage, some believed that human ingenuity and resilience might still tip the scales and turn the tide. In a reimagined world where giant dragons 1,000 times the size of humans suddenly descended upon Earth, chaos erupted across the globe. Cities crumbled under the weight of monstrous wings and fiery breath, leaving millions dead or injured in the blink of an eye. The skies turned a terrifying shade of ash-grey as the colossal beasts soared, attacking everything in their path. Human civilization, once advanced and resilient, now faced an existential threat like never before. Governments collapsed in panic, unable to coordinate an effective response against enemies of such unimaginable size. The death toll soared to over 50 million within the first few months, a massive toll on human life and infrastructure. Entire nations were reduced to rubble, with skyscrapers shattered and roads cracked apart by the sheer force of the creatures' landings. Specialized military units were powerless against beings that could crush tanks with their claws or incinerate entire cities with a single fiery breath. Scientists and engineers raced to develop new technologies, but the dragon's resilience and size made conventional weapons almost useless. Some warriors and survivalists took to underground bunkers, hoping to outlast the destruction, but many were overwhelmed. In the midst of devastation, a question emerged. Could humans possibly win this war against such titanic foes? Many believed that with today's technology alone, victory was impossible. The dragons were simply too large and powerful. However, a few visionary scientists proposed that exploiting the dragon's size might be key to victory. They argued that the giant's enormous size could be their weakness, making them vulnerable to coordinated attacks targeting their eyes or joints. A global coalition was formed, uniting military forces, scientists, and engineers from around the world. Humans began to craft specialized drones and remote-controlled weapons that could evade the dragon's destructive sweep and attack weak spots. The battle lines were drawn on a scale never seen before, as humanity fought to survive and retake their planet. During fierce clashes, the dragons caused massive destruction. Cities engulfed in flames, forests razed to ash, seas churned by their wings. Despite incredible losses, humanity's resilience shone through as they adapted and fought back with innovative tactics. Massive casualties continued to mount. Over 100 million lives were lost in the ongoing war, a staggering human toll. The global economy was shattered, with entire regions rendered uninhabitable and trade routes obliterated. In one pivotal strike, humans managed to target the dragon's sensory organs, causing disorientation and chaos among the beasts. This tactic led to a temporary halt in their relentless assault, giving humanity a moment of cautious hope. However, the dragon's regenerative abilities and sheer size meant that they could withstand even severe injuries. As months turned into years, the war evolved into a brutal stalemate, with neither side able to claim ultimate victory. The dragons showcased their dominance by destroying iconic landmarks. The Eiffel Tower, Statue of Liberty, and Taj Mahal fell under their claws. Humans retaliated with incredible ingenuity, building gigantic mechanical constructs imitating dragon anatomy to understand and counter them. A breakthrough came when scientists discovered a way to emit high-frequency signals that disoriented the dragons temporarily. These signals allowed coordinated human strikes to target vital points, slowly diminishing the dragon's power. Despite humanity's efforts, the damage to civilizations was colossal. Vast populations displaced, cultures decimated. Many cities remained in ruins, human survivors living in underground colonies or remote wilderness areas. The death toll continued to rise, with estimates surpassing 200 million lives lost worldwide by the war's peak. The environmental impact was catastrophic as well, with ecosystems disrupted, oceans polluted, and the Earth's climate affected. In the final phases of the conflict, a massive alliance launched a daring plan to target the dragon's massive wings, seeking to ground them permanently. Using a combination of aerial drones and ground-based artillery, humans inflicted devastating damage on the giant's mobility. This strategy paid off, and slowly but surely, the giants began to weaken, their reign of terror diminishing. Eventually, a decisive strike managed to fatally injure the largest and most feared dragon, ending the threat. After the dust settled, Earth was a scarred planet, oceans filled with debris, landscapes covered in destruction. Survivors faced a daunting task, rebuilding their shattered civilization from the ashes of war. The victory was bitter, with millions of lives lost and entire cultures lost to the ferocity of the giants. But humanity's resilience proved stronger than ever, determined to learn from the devastation and rebuild anew. In this reimagined world, the war against the colossal dragons demonstrated that even the mightiest foes could be challenged with innovation, unity, and perseverance. The question remained, would future generations remember this war as a tragedy or a testament to human resilience? In a reimagined world where giant scorpions 1,000 times the size of humans attack Earth, chaos erupted across the globe. These colossal creatures with deadly pincers and venomous tails swept through cities, leaving destruction in their wake. The initial attack devastated major metropolises, causing millions of deaths within days. Civilizations collapsed under the onslaught as governments scrambled to respond to the unexpected threat. The death toll skyrocketed. with estimates reaching over 10 million in the first weeks alone. Skyscrapers were toppled, highways shredded, and entire regions rendered uninhabitable within hours. Scientists and military strategists were baffled by the scale and ferocity of the invasion. Humans initially lacked effective weapons because their technology was unprepared for such monstrous adversaries. The giant scorpions showed remarkable resilience against conventional artillery and missiles. Yet humanity refused to surrender without fight, rallying to develop new tactics and weapons. In underground bunkers and fortified cities, humans began to organize resistance movements. They crafted giant robotic exoskeletons and ancient biological weapons to combat the scorpion menace. A fierce war ensued that lasted for months, with both sides suffering heavy losses. The scorpions proved to be formidable enemies, capable of regenerating lost limbs and withstanding extreme temperatures. Despite their size and strength, they had vulnerabilities, like heat sensitivity and disorganized swarming behavior. Humans used their intelligence and coordination to set traps and use fire, acid, and electromagnetic pulses. The global death count eventually surpassed 50 million, but humanity managed to slow the scorpion advance. Major cities like New York, Beijing, and London were reduced to ash and rubble. The damage to civilizations was irreparable, infrastructure destroyed, economies shattered, populations decimated. In some regions, entire societies were wiped out, leaving behind only ruins and stories of the chaos. The world had to adapt radically, living in underground shelters and sparse rural areas. In a reimagined world where giant snails 1,000 times the size of humans suddenly attack Earth, chaos erupts overnight. The snails, with their enormous gnarled shells and mucus-covered bodies, crawl over cities, crushing buildings beneath their massive weight. People watch in horror as the creatures leave trails of corrosive slime that dissolve steel and concrete. The initial wave of attack results in catastrophic destruction across major cities like New York, Tokyo, and Paris. Millions of lives are lost within the first few days, with death tolls rising rapidly into the millions. Civilizations are left in ruins, with infrastructure shattered and economies broken overnight. Emergency services struggle to keep up, overwhelmed by the scale of devastation and the enormous size of their enemies. Global governments unite in a frantic effort to combat these monstrous invaders, developing new weapons and strategies. Despite advanced technology, conventional military tactics fail miserably against the snails' tough shells and slow but unstoppable advance. Bioengineers attempt to create specific biological weapons, but the snail's thick shells provide brutal protection. The creature's mucus is highly toxic, contaminating water supplies and spreading disease among survivors. As the weeks pass, entire regions are abandoned, turned into no man's lands, haunted by slow-moving but destructive giants. The death count soars, surpassing 10 million worldwide as humanity fights desperately for survival. Mass panic ensues, with people fleeing inland or taking refuge in underground bunkers and caves. Some scientists theorize that the snails are a result of a failed experiment or extraterrestrial invasion, but the truth remains unknown. The ongoing battle causes major societal shifts, with communities rallying around makeshift defenses and survival groups. Despite their size, the snail's slow movement becomes a strategic advantage for humans in some regions. Guerrilla tactics, including hit-and-run ambushes and explosives, are employed to slow the giant's relentless march. The environment suffers immensely. Forests are flattened, coastlines eroded, and wildlife populations decimated. In urban areas, skyscrapers are toppled as if made of paper, leaving a landscape of rubble and debris. The damage to civilizations is unparalleled, with some entire countries reduced to battleground zones. Yet, humanity's perseverance shines through the despair, with scientists and engineers working tirelessly on innovative solutions. A breakthrough emerges when a group develops a biological agent designed to weaken the snail's shells and mucus production. This new weapon, once deployed, starts to turn the tide of the war, slowing the advance of the giant creatures. Fighting becomes more strategic, with human fighters utilizing the environment and advanced machinery to combat the slow but powerful snails. Despite the efforts, the death toll continues to climb, reaching upwards of 15 million globally by the 6th month. Millions more are injured, displaced, or psychologically traumatized by the relentless invasion. The cultural fabric of human society is torn apart. Art, history, and progress seem vanishing amidst the destruction. The war against the giant snails takes a surreal turn as some survivors begin to see the creatures almost as symbols of nature's wrath. Debates erupt about whether these snails are biological disasters or a sign of the planet's desperate cry for help. Meanwhile, in some regions, humans establish fortified enclaves, turning to underground bunkers and sealed communities for safety. A few resilient cities manage to resist the snail onslaught, becoming symbols of hope amid the chaos. Time becomes a blur as humanity fights to reclaim its world, with each victory hard-won and costly. In some cases, entire coastal cities are wiped out, transforming famous skylines into memories of past glory. Scientists finally succeed in developing a biological weapon that neutralizes the giant snails' mucus glands, severely impairing their movement and defense. The snails begin to retreat from the reinforced zones, but the damage is already irreversible in many regions. By the end of the first year, the death toll exceeds 50 million, with countless civilizations shattered beyond recognition. In the aftermath, the surviving humans rebuild their societies, now deeply changed and scarred by the savage war. The giant snail invasion becomes a stark reminder of nature's unpredictable fury and humanity's fragile existence on Earth. Despite the devastation, stories of resilience and survival emerge, inspiring future generations to protect their world better. The world learns that in the face of such overwhelming force, strategy, innovation, and unity are humanity's greatest weapons. And in this tumultuous, reimagined Earth, life perseveres, forever marked by the day giant snails nearly changed everything. In a reimagined world where giant Arctic snowy owls 1,000 times the size of humans suddenly emerged from the icy depths, chaos unfolded. These colossal predators, with wings spanning over a mile, descended upon the earth with terrifying agility and power. The skies darkened as thousands of these monstrous owls soared, casting ominous shadows over cities and forests alike. Their piercing, glowing eyes scanned the landscape for prey, instilling instant panic among the human populations. Societies scrambled to mobilize their defenses, but traditional weapons proved utterly useless against these enormous flying beasts. In mere weeks, entire civilizations faced apocalyptic destruction as the owls tore through infrastructure with ease. Major cities like New York, Beijing, and London suffered catastrophic damage, with skyscrapers shattered and streets buried under debris. The death toll soared into the millions as hospitals overwhelmed with victims and the chaos unraveled social order. Governments declared states of emergency, but their efforts to combat the giant owls failed dramatically. Drone swarms and military aircraft were decimated before they could even reach the flying behemoths. Fighting these creatures seemed futile. No human-made weaponry could pierce their thick, icy feathers and reinforced claws. Amidst the destruction, some scientists speculated that the owls were a result of climate change, accelerated by unforeseen ecological shifts. Others feared they were an unnatural result of genetic experiments gone wrong, unleashed on the world as a form of biological terror. As the death toll climbed, humanity's hope waned and many retreated to underground bunkers hoping to survive. Despite the overwhelming odds, pockets of resistance formed, using the terrain to their advantage, hiding in forests and mountains. A few brave groups attempted to develop new weapons using sound waves and electromagnetic pulses, but progress was slow and uncertain. Meanwhile, the giant owls adapted quickly, their intelligence seemingly heightened by their colossal size and predatory instincts. They hunted in packs, coordinated attacks on human settlements, and seemed almost intelligent in their hunting strategies. The world's environment was heavily impacted. Forests were torn apart, lakes drained, and the air thick with ash and debris. The oceans were not spared. Colossal owls swooped down from the clouds, disrupting marine life and coastal communities. Despite the destruction, some humans began to wonder, could there be a way to turn the tide in this surreal war? Some theorized niching down to biological warfare, but ethical debates and resource constraints hindered such efforts. Meanwhile, stories of miraculous escapes and heroic sacrifices emerged across social media, going viral worldwide. Images of fiery battle scenes, desperate defenses, and the sheer scale of devastation spread like wildfire. News outlets struggled to keep up with the rapidly evolving crisis, their footage viewed by billions across the globe. In shelters and safe zones, survivors shared stories of loss, resilience, and hope amidst the shadows of destruction. Religious and spiritual leaders called for unity and prayer, believing the world was facing a divine test. Some scientists speculated that the owl's appearance was a sign of environmental imbalance, urging urgent climate action. Amidst the chaos, conspiracy theories bloomed, suggesting the giants were a government experiment or an alien invasion. Despite the despair, a few visionary engineers proposed creative solutions like giant net traps and thermal barriers. The global community's resilience was tested like never before. Humanity had to adapt or face extinction. Eventually, small groups launched coordinated strikes using heavy artillery, hoping to exhaust the owls' energy supplies. In a surprising turn, some of the giant owls appeared to retreat temporarily, giving humans a glimmer of hope. Scientists believed this was a strategic pause, likely to regroup and hunt again when the opportunity arose. The damage to civilization was profound. Millions dead, countless cities in ruins, economies shattered beyond repair. However, in the face of devastation, underground resistance movements grew stronger, planning a future comeback. Humans learned tough lessons about environmental stewardship and the dangers of unchecked ecological meddling. They realized that coexisting with nature required humility and respect, now more than ever. As the dust settled temporarily, humanity began rebuilding, hoping to learn from this horrifying ordeal. The war against the 1,000x-sized snowy owls had changed the world forever, leaving scars but igniting a resilience. In the end, who would win in this surreal war? The giants or humans? It largely depended on ingenuity, adaptability, and unity. Many believed that humans, with their ability to innovate and collaborate, could eventually reclaim their world from the monstrous predators. In a reimagined world, the Earth was suddenly invaded by giant mandrills, each one 1,000 times larger than humans. The first sighting sent shockwaves across social media, with videos going viral overnight showing these colossal creatures tearing through cities. People worldwide watched in horror as skyscrapers crumbled under the force of their powerful fists. The initial chaos was devastating, with over 5 million deaths reported within the first week. Civilizations across Asia, Europe, and the Americas were left in ruins as the mandrills rampaged unchecked. Governments scrambled to organize defenses, but traditional weapons were no match for such massive beasts. The military deployed tanks, jets, and even nuclear weapons, but the giant mandrills proved nearly impervious to destruction. The damage to infrastructure was catastrophic, with millions displaced and entire urban areas obliterated. Scientists warned that unless a new strategy was devised, humanity's survival was at stake. In the midst of chaos, a global alliance was formed to counter this unprecedented threat. Veteran scientists proposed that the mandrills, despite their size, had weaknesses in their eyes and brains. A daring plan was set in motion to lure them into enclosed zones where specialized weapons could be used. Meanwhile, some factions believed that the giant mandrills might be intelligent and capable of communication. Survivors described seeing them exhibit signs of curiosity and even empathy in their destructive rampage. Despite these theories, the relentless assault continued, with the death toll climbing into the tens of millions. Civilizations struggled to sustain themselves amid ongoing destruction and fear. The question loomed: who would win in a war against these giant mandrills in today's times? The humans possessed advanced technology, but the mandrills' brute strength was extraordinary. Drone swarms attempted to guide explosives into their eyes, but the creatures swatted them away like insects. Many believed the mandrills could regenerate faster than humans could destroy them. The Earth seemed on the brink of an irreversible collapse, with ecosystems shattered and societies fractured. Yet some experts speculated that if humans worked together, they might find a way to outsmart the giants. A secret project was launched to develop a genetically engineered virus aimed at weakening the mandrills. This virus targeted their rapid cell regeneration, hoping to render them vulnerable. Meanwhile, regions like Antarctica and deep oceans remained relatively untouched, serving as refuges. Hope appeared in the form of scientists leveraging AI to analyze mandrill behavior and predict their movements. Through relentless effort, some military bases began deploying experimental energy-based weapons that showed promise. A turning point arrived when a team successfully used sound frequencies to disorient the mandrills temporarily. This brief window was exploited to launch a coordinated assault using precision-guided missiles. The death toll started declining as more effective strategies took shape. Yet the resilience of the mandrills was daunting. They adapted quickly to new threats. The battle between humans and giant mandrills was fierce, fought on land, air, and sea. Cities like New York, Tokyo, and Paris faced near total devastation, becoming battlegrounds for survival. Despite the chaos, stories of heroism and resilience emerged from the ruins, inspiring hope. A worldwide movement grew, advocating for unity and innovative thinking to solve the crisis. Scientists eventually discovered a cluster of weak points in the mandrill's neurological systems. Using this knowledge, humanity launched a final massive attack aiming to incapacitate them permanently. The decisive moment arrived when a combined force used a new bioengineered agent to disable their movement. The giant mandrills, overwhelmed by the attack, finally retreated or fell in battle, bringing relief. The aftermath saw a world scarred but awakened to the importance of harmony with nature and technology. Civilizations began rebuilding, with new safety measures and understanding of biological risks. The Earth's landscape was forever changed, but humanity learned vital lessons about resilience and adaptation. In the end, the victory was bittersweet, marked by millions of lives lost, but also strengthened resolve. The world would never forget the days when giant mandrills threatened to wipe out human civilization. And the question remained, in a world of giants, could humans ever truly prevail without unity and innovation?